Chapter 3, Lesson 8, Dividing Decimals by Decimals. So if we look at the examples on page 236, we have find 1.71 divided by 0.9. So remember, our first number goes on the inside, our second number goes on the outside. Now, we cannot have a decimal point on the outside because we don't know how to compute with that kind of a number. So if we have to move the decimal point over one time on the outside to get it at the back, we have to move it one time on the inside. So we keep them equivalent, and then we rewrite our problem. And then we bring our decimal point straight up and divide as we did in lesson 7. So we're going to look at the guided questions A, B, and C on page 236, and D, E, and F on page 237. And they are going to be placed in our foldable on flap 5. We did lesson 7 on the same flap, but on one side. Okay. Now we're going to turn it over, or turn it around, and do page 236, guided problems A, B, C, D, E, and F. So we're going to start how we started before, but before we write our numbers inside of the division house, we're going to look at our number in the back, or the second number. Okay. If there is a decimal point there, we have to move it over till we get to the back. We moved it over one time on this number, so we have to move it over one time here. So now we have 544 on the inside and 17 on the outside. 17 goes into, or cannot go into 5. And then we can look at 17 into 54. So 17 is about 20, 54 is about 60. Let's try 3 times. So let's do 17 times 3. So we have 1, carry a 2, and 5. 17 times 3 is 51. So we can use that. We'll put 51 here and the 3 at the top. So 3 times 17 is 51. We're going to subtract to get 3, bring our 4 down, and repeat. How many times does 17 go into 34? 17 can go into 34 2 times. 2 times 17 is 34. We subtract and we have 0. So we've got to a 0 down here. We have a number on top of every number inside of our house, and we've brought down everything. So our correct answer is 32. Okay. For question B, remember we start with our second number, and if there's a decimal point there, we have to move our decimal point until we get it to the back. So in this case, it's 1 2 times. So now we have a 36 on the outside, and we have to move it 2 times on the first number. So that's 1, 2, and now it's in between the 2 and 4. So we have 842.4. It's okay to have the decimal point in the inside. We have them in the inside all throughout lesson 7. And remember, from lesson 7, we're going to bring our decimal point straight up and then divide as usual. 36 cannot go into 8, so we'll put a 0. 36 can go into 84 2 times. 2 times 36 is 72. We can subtract to get 12. And then we bring down our 2. And we repeat. How many times can 36 go into 122? Okay. So again, we have to kind of estimate to see what we think that might be. Okay. 122 is close to 100. 36 is close to 30. So we can say about 3 times, so that's a good place to start. So down towards the bottom, we could do 36 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18, carry a 1. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So we're looking at 108. That seems like a reasonable number. So we're going to put our 3 at the top. We just found that 3 times 36 is 108. We're going to subtract. So we have to borrow from the 2, make this a 1. That becomes a 12, so that's a 4. 1 minus 0 is 1. And then we have to bring down our 4 and repeat. How many times does 36 go into 144? Let's try 4 times. Let's see, 36 times 4. 6 times 4 is 24, carry a 2. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14. And we actually have 144. So we'll put our 4 up here. And 4 times 36 is 144. So subtract to get 0. And we are done. Okay, question C. Remember, we have to look at our second number. The second number is what determines if we have to move the decimal point and how many times we have to. So our second number here has 3 numbers after the decimal point, so we have to move it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So now we have a plain 7 on the outside. We go to our first number and move 1, 2, 3. So it's now after the 6. So we have 6.3. We bring our decimal point straight up. 7 cannot go into 6. But 7 can go into 63 9 times. 9 times 7 is 63. Subtract to get 0. Okay, so don't be fearful of the decimal points. We want to look at our second number and move it to the back and count how many times. So that was 1, 2, 3 to get it all the way to the back. And then we go to our first number and we move it the same number of spaces. So it's okay to have a decimal point on the inside, but not on the outside. Okay, let's look at question D. So we're looking at our second number. Okay, we'll make this circle a little bit smaller. Okay. And how many numbers behind the decimal point? In this case, there are 3. So 1, 2, 3. Now we have to move, so now it's 1, 2, 3, which makes it a 14 on the outside. We have to move our first number 3 decimal points. So 1, 2, 3. Now, we only have one number, so we have this magical number of 0 we can always fill in spaces with. So now that is 5, 6, 0, 0. Remember, it was here, so we moved it 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then we can bring it straight up from there if we'd like to. Okay. Now 14 goes into 5 0 times. 14 goes into 56 4 times. 4 times 14 is 56. We subtract and get 0. We are not done yet because we still have these numbers we haven't brought down and no numbers on top to fill in. So we bring down a 0. How many times does 14 go into 0? 0 times. 0 times 14 is 0. Subtract 0. Bring down our last 0. How many times does 14 go into 0? Again, 0 times. Okay. 14 times 0 is 0. Subtract, and we have 0 again. There is nothing else to bring down. We have a number on top of everything in our division house, so we're good to go. So this answer is 400, which makes sense because this number is very, very small. This is less than 1 fill. Okay, so how many less than 1 fills, or less than 2 fills, excuse me, will go into 5 dirham and 60 fills 400 times? That makes sense. Now, let's look at E. So for E, we don't have any numbers after the decimal point. So we're just going to write our 6.24 on the inside. This is a decimal point we're going to bring straight up. And we're going to put 200 on the outside. Can 200 go into 6? 0 times. Can 200 go into 62? 0 times. Can 200 go into 624? Yes, 3 times. So 3 times 200 is 600. We're going to subtract to get 24. And we're going to see how many times can 200 go into 24. Okay, now, if 200 goes into 24, we know that is 0 times. We're going to add a 0 underneath and bring it down. Okay. So now we can do how many times does 200 go into 240? We'll add the 0 and bring it down. We don't need the 0 at the top yet because we had to bring something down. Okay. How many times does 200 go into 240? 1 time. 1 times 200 is 200. Subtract to get 40. Okay, we can't put a remainder if we have a decimal point in our answer so far. So then we add another special 0. Okay, how many times does 200 go into 400? Twice. Subtract and 0. So we've used every number on the inside. We actually had to add 2 more zeros in order to fill it in. We can't put a remainder like we did in lessons 5, 6, and 7 if we have a decimal point. Okay, a decimal point already means it's less than 1. So we have to see how many less than 1 or how far less than 1, and that's when we will add the zeros underneath or inside of our division box. All right, let's look at F. On our second number, there's no decimal points in it, so we're okay. Our first number of 0.4 goes in the inside, and we're going to bring our decimal point straight up to the top. And we put our 25 on the outside. Can 25 go into 0? No. Can 25 go into 4? No, it cannot. Now, we're not done. We can't just leave this alone. We have to add a 0 in after the 4. Can 25 go into 40? Yes, it can. 1 time. 1 times 25 is 25. Subtract to get 15. Okay. And after you subtract, you have to bring down. If there is not something to bring down, you're going to make something of a 0. Okay, how many 25s go into 150? That would be 6. 6 times 25 is 150. We subtract, and now we have a 0. So again, when you are dividing with decimals, you can add zeros to the back at the inside until you end up with a 0 after you subtract. Okay, so that's the end of our guided questions. And now we're going to look at the guided practice questions on page 238. But in order to keep it neat, we're going to put these problems on page 16 in our notebook. So you will title your notebook on page 16, Chapter 3, Lesson 8, Guided Practice, page 238. Okay. Problem number 1 on this page is written as 3.69 divided by 0.3. Okay. So we have to start by looking at our second number. And our second number does have a decimal point, so we need to move it so it doesn't. So now it is just 3 on the outside. Now if we moved it 1 time on our second number, we have to move it 1 time on our first number. So now our new number on the inside is 36.9, and we're going to bring our decimal point straight up so we don't forget about it. And now we just divide like we did in lesson 7. How many times does 3 go into 3? 1 time. So 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract to get 0. Bring down the 6. How many times does 3 go into 6? 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract to get 0, but we're not done because we have to bring down the 9. How many times does 3 go into 9? 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract to get 0. So 3.69 divided by 0.3 is 12.3. Okay. Question number 2. It's written in the book. Okay, this is where these problems are coming from. 0.0338 divided by 1.3. So again, we're going to look at our second number. Our second number is 1.3, and we have to move the decimal over 1 time to get rid of it. So that means we're going to put 13 on the outside. If we moved it 1 time on our second number, we have to move it 1 time on the first number. So now we have 0.338. And we're going to bring our decimal point straight up to the top so we don't forget it. Now we divide like we've been dividing all week. 13 goes into 0, 0 times. 13 goes into 3, 0 times. 13 goes into 33, 2 times. 2 times 13 is 26. We subtract to get 7, bring down our 8. How many times does 13 go into 78? We don't know for sure, so let's try some numbers. Let's try 13 times 5. Okay, that's 15, carry a 1. That's 65. Okay, we're close. Let's try 13 times 6 and see if that goes over. And if it doesn't, then that might be the number we use. 6 times 3 is 18. Carry a 1. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1 is 7. Oh, look, it's the 78 that we need. So we're going to put a 6 up here. 6 times 13 is 78. We subtract to get 0. So 0.0338 divided by 1.3, 0.026. See how important it is to make sure we bring our decimal point straight up right away so we don't forget where it's placed. Okay. Now, back to question 3. And again, I'm looking on page 238 in your math book. Guided practice. Question number 3 now. Question 3 is 2.943 divided by 2.7. So remember the steps. We're going to start with our second number. Our second number is 2.7. So one number after the decimal point, move it over 1 time. So now we have 27 on the outside. Okay. If we moved it 1 time on the second number, we have to move it 1 time on the first number. So now this becomes 29.43. And we bring our decimal point straight up before we do any other division. Okay. Can 27 go into 2? Nope, 0 times. How many 27s can we take out of 29? 1 of them. So that's 27, and we subtract to get 2. And bring down our 4. How many 27s go into 24? Now this is where you put the 0 at the top. If you've brought down a number and you still don't have any way to put the divisor into the dividend, or the outside into what's left after you subtract, that's when you put a 0 on the top. Okay, you can multiply by 0 and subtract and show your 24, and then you're going to bring down the 3. How many times does 27 go into 243? So let's think, we know we need something pretty big, so let's try 27 times 8. 8 times 7 is 56, carry a 5. 16 plus 5 is 21. Okay, that's pretty close, but let's try 27 times 9 to see if that will go over. Okay, 9 times 7 is 63, carry a 6. 18 plus 6 is 24. So that is the 243 that we need. So then we will put a 9 up here. 9 times 27 243. Subtract, and we have a 0. So our answer is 1.09. Okay. Question 4 is a word problem. So Heinz bought 5.75 yards of fleece fabric to make blankets for a charity. She needs 1.85 yards for each blanket. How many blankets can she make with the fabric she bought? So in this case, we're going to have fabric bought divided by fabric needed. Okay, how much did she buy? She bought 5.75 divided by how much does she need? 1.85. Okay. So again, we're going to look at the second number. So our second number has 2 numbers after the decimal. We have to move it over twice. We're going to come back to our notebook. So let's go ahead and write the 5.75 divided by 1.85. So we know where all of our numbers are coming from. Second number, move over twice. So that's 185 on the outside. Move the second one twice. You have to move the first one twice. So it's 575. Okay. All right, let's look at this and let's try. Well, we know 185 cannot go into 5. It can't go into 57. So now let's see. A good place to start is times 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. Carry a 2. 5 times 8 is 40. Plus 2 is 42. Carry a 4. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 4 is 9. So that's way too big. All right, let's bring it down a little bit. Let's try 185 times 3. Okay. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry a 1. 3 times 8 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. Carry a 2. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay, so 555 is less than 575, and that can work. So we're going to do 3, and then we have 555. We subtract to get 20. Now, if we are talking about blankets, and you want to make blankets, are you going to give anyone a piece of a blanket? No. Okay. So even if we have this 3 after we divided and we still have this remainder of 20, okay, we can have a remainder because there is no decimal point in this part of our problem. There is no need for us to continue to divide. She can only make 3 blankets. You cannot make a half of a blanket or a piece of a blanket. If you're going to make blankets to give away, you're going to give away an entire blanket. Okay. So again, this was chapter 3, lesson 8, dividing decimal by decimals. We filled out our foldable with our guided questions on page 236 and 237, and the guided practice on page 238 is written on page 16 in your notebook because there's just not enough room to do division neatly inside of your math book. See you in class tomorrow.